course, you're welcome to hang on and hear what our next speaker is going to say, and that's going to be Anthony. Anthony Baldock is Corporate Director of Ashford Port Health, and he's the one that will be looking after our BCP and Sevington. And we've had a previous conversation where he says he's very happy to come on and explain his view. Now, obviously, we heard from Dover at Port Health, so we're very excited to hear what he has to say. And again, we thank the authorities, the Port Health authorities, for coming on, and we don't take it for granted. We really appreciate it to come on. So, Anthony, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. It's fantastic to see you again.
I sent you the slides, Arnie. Do you want to load them your end? They're in your.
I will do that immediately. If you want to say hello while I
do
my background work, and I'll come back to you with the slides in just a moment.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. Arnie's already introduced me. So I am an environmental health officer by background. I've been at Ashford for 3 years, and I was brought to Ashford because Ashford was decided as the closest place to the Channel Tunnel freight for the Eurotunnel. That there is a piece of retained legislation that allows, if a port can't actually construct a BCP right next door, for it to be constructed slightly further away. I can't remember the name of it, but there is a piece of legislation that already allows that for that. So the BCP in Sevington was part of a larger complex that was to deal with an inland border facility, and that's why the building was built there. As it was very nice to hear the previous speaker talk about the kind of horrible times that the kind of Port Health authorities have been through, and it really has been like marching the troops up to the top of the hill and down again, and it has been quite horrible for the staff there. So what I'm trying to do today, I'm not really going to delve into policy areas, etc., because that's not really what I'm here to do, but I am hopefully going to give you some confidence as to what's happening at Sevington, and also a bit of a very brief tour of history. So if you'd click onto the next slide, please, Arnie, thank you. And obviously it's all around the port of entry and inland border facility. So if you could click the next one, so example BCPs in the UK, obviously at the moment, if you just click through all these, Arnie, we've got Gatwick, which is obviously an inland type facility for an airport. We've got Felixstowe on the coast, City of London, DP World, and obviously Immingham and Hull has been mentioned. We've also now nearly got Sevington as a new facility that's coming soon in Ashford. You won't see that on any of the listings at the present time because it doesn't have a listing on IPAFs, which is our system, very similar to Trace's NT. So once that is done and the designation is in place, you will see Ashford as a place, or Sevington, I should say, as a place where you can import goods. If you'd like to click the next slide, please, Arnie. So in terms of what actually happened, and to carry on from Richard's speech there, lots of debate was had, and there were originally going to be 2 large inland border facilities constructed. So one of these large border facilities was going to be constructed at Whitecliffs, and that was in Dover. So you'll see at the top right of the map there. And there was also another site that was going to be developed, which was in Sevington in Ashford. It was very much, to the dislike of the council in Ashford because it was their prime development land at the time. So they were less than pleased after just completing a huge kind of exercise of putting a new junction on the motorway, which you see on the map there, that then the Department of Transport bought that piece of land, and yes, as I say, they weren't very pleased about it. Needless to say, Sevington was constructed, and the IBF has been there for a number of years. Whitecliffs, I believe, wasn't developed because there was so big problems with the geology, and it was incredibly expensive. So in the end, it was decided that that site wouldn't be built, and instead of an IBF, a building was kind of then created, and it was created as a BCP in Bastion Point on its own merit. So even though it wasn't an IBF, so it didn't have customs facilities, there were other custom facilities in Dover which were privately run, but a BCP was planned there. So if you'd like to click the next slide, please. So that the 2 land, as I said, there were 2 inland border facilities originally. Whitecliffs was not pursued, and the inland BCP and Sevington and Bastion Point was kind of there. I can see Beverly's putting notes into the chat there. So as I say, I'm not going to comment on policy. These things were decided before I kind of arrived at Ashford, and I assume DEFRA have got their facts right, and I trust they do. So I'm not going to respond to the comments. Can you just go back 1 second, please, Arnie? Apologies. Thank you. So in terms of why the decision was taken to have one BCP, it was a decision taken by DEFRA after they reviewed the border target operating model. Now that they reviewed that, and I say that wasn't something within my world, that's something we were told, but they reviewed the numbers of goods, and the review of the BTOM really reduced a lot of the checking that was always going to be required, because the model was based on 100% of documentary checks, etc., for all goods. Now you've probably seen, because obviously it's your interest to check these things, there has been a change in the kind of check levels for certain numbers of goods, and certain low-level red goods now are actually only subject to you having to notify that they may be called in to a border control post, any border control post, for surveillance purposes, but you won't have to supply all the documents around those level of the goods there. Can you click onto the next one, please, Arnie? Thank you. So if you want to click again on that slide. So as I've kind of just reiterating there, the BCP short straights were obviously needed for Eurotunnel and for ferries. There was a lot of gaps in data, because obviously we'd never done this before, and we were part of the EU, so there was no customs data, there was no SPS data. An enormous amount of modelling has been done by Costain, I believe. The border operating model, obviously, it was delayed many times, and the last delay was allegedly to calibrate rest of the world goods, and that's calibrating with the European goods there. It's in progress, but Europe has been done first, and many other risk categories haven't kind of been fixed. That the other important thing to remember is there is a border 25 and single window vision from the government to make one kind of stop at the border, and that brings in all the customs control and all the SPS controls to make it as easy as possible for people to want to come through there. And the EU model it is kind of different to the rest of the world, of course, in the border operating model. That there was already a big change in terms of what was happening in the short straits and the number of checks that were happening, but the two have been brought together now. We do have staff in place and trained, and that's true in many BCPs there. If you'd like to click to the next slide, please, Arnie. Thank you. So that's just reiterating that the border operating model became the target operating model, and it's worth flicking through this document. It does contain some good stuff in there, and not just from an SPS point of view. Anybody importing will benefit from the trying to use common data sets and not lots and lots of data entry. So it is a good piece of work there. Can you click to the next one, please, Arnie? So countdown. So what's actually happening now, further to that document being published, from the end of this month, the requirement for export health certificates comes into play, and those things will have to be notified onto IPAFs. There aren't physical kind of checks taking place then, and things won't have to come into border control post at that point in time. And it's really for a large kind of auditing process, and to be able to help the trade get these things right and check that systems work. So that will run from the 31st of January to April this year, and a number of Port Health authorities are assisting DEFRA with that work, with experienced people. The designation of the facility in the Ashford area is progressing, and that's set for March 24. It's important to say as well that the product BCP, which is the part that we're interested in today, obviously, in terms of the meat product side, is only one of the BCPs that will be on site in Sevington. And Sevington has the BCP for plants and seeds. It also has a BCP for live animals in place there too. So that's where the work will be done for all those other BCP lines, and we are obviously located on the site there. In terms of your kind of interest here, products of animal origin, that the regime for calling those goods in will begin on the 30th of April 2024, and that will trigger through the systems that we've mentioned before. IPAFs and GVMS will be used to tell people when they need to come in, and IPAFs will be used to tell somebody that their goods have been selected. There is only around 1% selection of goods. That is true. There is is up to 30% there, but I think that's been left in for surveillance purposes too. I think, in all honesty, there just wouldn't be the space to call that many products through. It just wouldn't happen there. Other thing, probably not of that much interest to this audience, high-risk food not of animal origin is also subject to SPS controls, and that will be processed through this kind of facility too. So what's going to happen? There's no clearance. There's the clearance hub and docks being done in January, and there's no holds there. IPAFS comes into play at that point. 1% ultimately in April will be selected for inspection, and that's going to be generated from IPAFS itself. And 100% of the docks for the medium and high risk products will need to be checked, as of the rest of the world goods now. But anything in the low risk categories has to be notified. But we will be looking to obviously do surveillance when we're told to what we're going to do there. There's also no fees and charges until April. If you'd like to click the next slide, please, Arnie. And these are just showing the product types that will be coming through. So I said Sevington we will be dealing with plastics. We'll be doing high-risk food, not of animal origin, animal feed, and meat products, and they'll all be going there. And live animals, as I say, is also on site there. If you'd like to click again, please, Arnie. So, as I've said there, just to reiterate, in terms of how ready is the building there, it has felt like being the Grand Old Duke of York and having a huge kind of staff push and recruiting people. And then we had to let people go, and then we sat on our hands a little bit. But we are finally getting there. So designation is due to happen in March 2024, and that's a government piece of work that's done through the AFA teams there. I'm very lucky. I do have most of the OVSs in place again back at Sevington, which is a real good thing for me. We do have a trained environmental health team, and we're recruiting again for more staff to make sure we can cover. The building is complete, and it's been signed off as satisfactory. That's for us and the plants and seeds people. The live animal part of the building still isn't complete, and that's due to come on the stream, I think, at the end of either this year or early the year after. We are already dealing with illegal, unregistered, unregulated fishing controls. So we do have Phyllis, which you're probably common to some of the people on this call. So that's in place, and that is working, and people can set up accounts on that. And as I've already mentioned, IPAFs will be we will be lifted on IPAFs, and then we will be able to in kind of everybody will be able to get on and see that BCP there. Okay, if you'd like to click the next slide, please. And as I've said before, what the part that Ashford Port Health will be doing is part of the 3 BCPs. So the part that we will be looking after is the product BCP. That's the products of animal origin, product not of animal origin, and Port Health authorities also do checks for organics, IUU'd and feed, and Food Standards Agency kind of, there are certain things they control around high-risk foods not of animal origins I've mentioned, so pesticide samples, aflatoxins, etc., and plastic kitchenware from China that's in contact with foodstuffs. So that's all the product lines that we will be able to deal with that will come through that facility there. If you'd like to click the next slide. So that's just to kind of summarize what goes on there. Animal health, ASF zoonoses, that's really the, obviously that's the live animal side of the thing. And from a veterinary point of view, products, but there is a live animal thing there. But that's the kind of things that we will be doing there. If you'd like to click the next slide, please, Arnie. And fees and charges. I know people are very worried about fees and charges. That the fees and charges that we will be dealing with are always based on cost recovery for the local authority, and we're not allowed to make a huge profit out of that. And we have based our costs on similar models of places that do these kind of controls at the moment there. There will be lab fees for certain products that come through for samples, and we wouldn't make any money from that. We would just pass on the cost, or whatever the laboratory charges us, we would just add to the work that we do there. The common user charge, that's very, very true, as Richard was saying there. I'm aware of that. That's not something that's a local authority charge. That is essentially levied charge, and that's to ensure that the person running the facility, they can get some money back for that. In terms of any goods that we seize and destroy, if somebody doesn't re-export within the 60 days, we would charge for that, obviously, because it's very expensive to deal with those things, either incineration or for deep landfill. And as I've said before, we have Phyllis and Destinate already, so people can set up accounts, so it's hopefully easier for them to do business with us. And there is a new version of Phyllis coming soon, and I can't remember the name, but so that hopefully will be even easier to interact with. If you could click the next slide, please, Arnie. Okay, and just to kind of reiterate, it obviously Sevington isn't about smuggling, so we're not there to facilitate to deal with smuggling controls. That's a customs piece of work. There is a customs presence on the site, and half the site is for customs, obviously. So that the part that we're responsible for is facilitating legally imported goods through Sevington, and Port Health's not the lead agency for smuggled goods. It was at one point, and it's gone back, and now, but it's back with Border Force. So Port Health officials obviously help Border Force, and they really do need help at the moment. So that's why that's happening, but it's not our primary role. Customs inland border facility at Sevington, there is there, of course, but most of the freight that they will look at is profiled for different kind of reasons, whether it's drugs or whether it's money, etc., and they're profiled as T2 goods and will be inspected. And obviously, the short straits is a major entry point, as Beverly said, for rest of the world and EU goods. And BCP, there is still a BCP at Dover. The change is the government facility, as Richard mentioned, hasn't been decided to open that one. So that's kind of just a summary there. I think I've got one more. I must be getting close to my time, Rick. And so thank you ever so much for listening. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I will ensure that we answer them. And if you want to contact by email, that's the generic email that'll go into the team, that we will pick up your inquiry and your question, and hopefully do it as quickly as possible. I think I had till 5 past. I think I've 6 minutes past, Arnie. So apologies for that, but I nearly did it within the time scale.
That's absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for this
No problem.
very insightful presentation. And I know we're not having a lot of time for questions, but one question that came up that is not so controversial are the opening hours of the BCP. Do you have any insight?
Yes, yeah, it's going to be a 24-hour operation, Arnie. So yeah, we're open 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. I was very worried about that because I didn't want to commit to that because it would be extremely costly and we have to levy that charge back. But a lot of modelling has been done, as I say, by government, who are sure that there is a trade. So yes, we will be opening all those hours. And I think same as Holyhead is planned to be like that. There are 3 or 4 ports in the UK that are asked to be 24-hour operations, so we will be one of those.
That's fantastic. I know there were quite a few questions about the opening hours and concerns of hold up. So this is really good news. Thank you very much. So again, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing a presentation. I know this is busy times for you and for Beverly and for many others. So thanks again, and is duly noted. We'll put the questions to you, and also you've shared your details, and the slides will be available. And thank you for making them available later on. So once again, Anthony, you're always very welcome to hang around and listen to more interesting